So we're here at Seven Barrows in the heart of the stables, the racing tack room. Plenty of famous racing colours and tack, which have been on many of the great horses that Nicky Henderson has trained and Unibet ambassador Nico de Boinville has ridden. We're going to take a long jog down memory lane, looking at some of the famous silks that Nico de Boinville has worn to victory from the Seven Barrows stable.
Sacre is the champion again!
And it's going to be 10 out of 10 over fences for Altior. Constitution Hill, simply breathtaking.
So Nico, we've got plenty of silks and memories to go through today. Let's have a look at the first one. Di Walters, this is your very first Cheltenham Festival winner colour. Whisper, what do you remember about that day?
I was just a £5 conditional. It was my first Cheltenham Festival as a claiming professional, as it were. And it was a very straightforward race for me, and I was probably very young and naive, and probably was easier than it should have been.
As it race down towards the final flight, it is Whisper and Nico de Boinville that will just have the lead.
And the race itself, the Coral Cup, to my eye, is a real helter-skelter of a race. Plenty of barging going on, but it was very straightforward for you, was it? You must have been on a well-handicapped horse that day.
I was on a Grade 1 horse masquerading as a handicapper, really, when you look back on it. And I had a lovely slot. I sort of sat third or fourth down the rail and honestly, it couldn't have ridden any easier. And then I think it was Get Me Out of Here, who was the well-punted horse of JP's, came to come and get me, and luckily Whisper kept finding.
And what were you thinking when he came up to sides and was taking you on? Were you thinking, I've got to get this first Cheltenham Festival win off my back, or were you just thinking, keep going, keep going?
It was just keep going, because this might only happen once.
Really? Well, it didn't just happen once. Yeah. Those colours, actually, 5 years later, the same race, the Coral Cup. You've won 16 Cheltenham Festival winners, but 2 with these colours. William Henry, how did that go?
William Henry, again, the Coral Cup was the race before Altior in the Champion Chase. So I was literally trying to think, I was thinking about, all sorts at that time, and the idea with William Henry was that he needed a bit of space, and I actually got down to the start last, so I was out the back and wide as well. And then gradually he managed to find his way into the race, which was, again, I had a lovely run round the outside and down the middle, and he took me through. So again, it was straightforward.
And you've ridden plenty of winners in these colours. Must be one of your favourite sets.
Definitely. I think the one that probably got away was Angel's Breath. I really loved that horse, and it was just a shame that he picked up that injury at such a crucial time in his career. But it's good to see him still sort of running around and doing what he can. So yeah, these are very special colours, and ones I hold dear.
So Nico, we come to one of the most famous sets of silks in the country at the moment. Michael Buckley. Obviously, everyone knows these from Constitution Hill. What do you remember about the first time you wore these silks for Constitution Hill?
For Constitution Hill at Sandown. That was his first race. There was a lot of talk about the horse because he was, doing some incredible things on the gallops in his work. Not so much, when he's just doing his canters, but in his work. And again, it was very straightforward with him. And it couldn't have been any easier. And he answered every call that we, I suppose, showed what he can do.
Constitution Hill, here's a smart one. This could be a top novice. Constitution Hill has drawn right away to win by about 10 or 12.
The race after that was back at Sandown, I think, wasn't it, in the Unibet Tolworth?
It
really
was.
Desperate ground, and he went through it so easily.
Exactly. Again, it was very straightforward. It was sort of at the height of COVID. I think, everyone was, struggling with it at the time, and yeah, again, a very straightforward day. The ground was atrocious that day, I remember, and again, he had a nice time through it and won very easily.
Constitution Hill, the colours of Michael Buckley, trained by Nicky Henderson, ridden by Nico de Boinville, a very easy win of the Unibet Tolworth Hurdle.
And then going to the Cheltenham Festival victories, I mean, he's won twice with you on board in sensational style at the festival. I mean, I've never seen you celebrate so much when you won a race as when you're wearing these colours.
Yeah.
It must give you such a feel and such a thrill to win on Constitution Hill in these colours.
Definitely, it's one, those days when you're riding a horse like him, you really enjoy them, and that's why we, it's not so much a job then, it's a pure joy to ride, and on that day when he won the Supreme, we it was fairly quick ground.
Here we go, flags raised again. They're off.
We went a really strong gallop with John Bon up front and Willie's horse as well, and yeah, it was one of those. Willie's horse fell at the first down the hill, and luckily I'd switched inside, and because otherwise I probably would have been taken out. And again, when you're racing, it's these split-second decisions which sometimes pay off, sometimes don't, and you're in the lap of the gods, really.
It's first strike to England in the colours of Michael Buckley. Constitution Hill, a class apart, wins the Supreme.
And then when he won the Unibet Champion Hurdle last year, again, from a person looking at the race, straightforward. I mean, he goes such a lovely pace that you can put him where you want. You were very early on, wanting to be near to the pace. And then coming to that final hurdle, all you had to do was jump it. And he leapt, didn't he? A little bit earlier than you thought.
Yeah, again, it was to try and keep the race as simple as we could. State Man, wanted to track me and see if he could do me for a bit of toe. And Sam Twiston went out on his horse and set good fractions, but coming down the hill again, Constitution was full of running, and I let him go on, and we were fairly cruising to the last. And he's just, sometimes it can happen, in the Champion Hurdle or in the Mares Hurdle at that time, they can just have a little reach for it, and he did come up, but luckily he's got so much power and impulsion that he was able to get out the other side, and away we went. Talking
about power, you rode in these colours to win the American Grand National on brain power. That must have been an amazing day.
Yes, that was a fantastic day, because the season before he won the International at which is now the Unibet.
Unibet, yep.
At Cheltenham, and that was a great day as well. And then we went out to Far Hills for the American National there. It was a race I'd been over to before.
Oh, right.
And I didn't have a very good time there, but anyway, I got round it. It's always a fantastic experience. It's 40,000 people, all with their pickup trucks, having big barbecues out the back, all flying their Donald Trump flags, and it's a fantastic event. And it's one Willie likes to target, and Gordon as well. And Willie Mullins had Wicklow Brave over, and you're given set draws, so you're only allowed to you're effectively given stall numbers without stalls. And I was drawn right in the car park on the very outside, and so I said to the boss before I started, I'm going to have to get in somehow. And eventually we did, and I managed to find my way onto because it's very tight as well. You want to be on the inside. You can't be out in the car park. So I think I ran over a few people just to try to get to the tail of Wicklow Brave, and then turning out the back, you then finish up on a chute and you go uphill, and it's quite a stiff finish. You actually need quite a good horse to win the American National, and I was tracking Wicklow Brave, and unfortunately Wicklow Brave came down at the last, and he was fatally injured, which was it did mar the event a bit, but or a lot rather, but it was just a great day for Michael Buckley and all Brain Pass connections, because we had targeted that race for him, and to take a horse out there, it costs a lot of money, and it's no easy feat. So yeah, that was a fantastic day, and one I remember fondly, even though all the events around it. But it's not easy to do.
And plenty of people, may know Constitution Hill with these silks, but they forget about the other horses you've ridden. I mean, Barrows Edge won a Unibet Lanzarote for you in these colours.
Yeah, Barrows Edge, he was a horse who didn't like he almost had a bit of claustrophobia. And in the Lanzarote, I went very wide, and everyone pretty much fell at the final hurdle, bar Barrows Edge. He was so wide, and he was finishing with flying at the last. And anyway, he went on to win it, and so there was a bit of luck involved as well, but again, a good day.
And Michael's had plenty of horses with Nicky that you wouldn't have ridden, like the Proclamation was a very good horse with these colours. Another very good horse, Finian's Rainbow, which you didn't ride in a race, but you rode at home.
No, Finian's Rainbow was part of the Magnificent Seven, and I was just a stable lad at the time when he was around, and Conor Murphy rode him every day and was very attached to the horse. I think one of the only times I rode him was when we used to school over 2 fences out the back, just in front of the house there, and that was our first sort of starting to see if they were going chasing or hurdling, and I was the first one to be able to ride Finian's Rainbow over a fence, and it absolutely blew my mind as a young 22-year-old or whatever I was. And yeah, I mean, these colours go way back through the history of Seven Barrows as much as anything.
So one set of silks we should really pay homage to is Ken Knox's silks. That I mean, you were saying these really launched your career in many ways. £7 you were getting, and you won a listed race with these colours.
Yep, Ken Knox, again, was a massive supporter of youngsters coming through. He got Darrell Holland going at Barry Hills's, and he actually had a point-to-pointer that I rode called Cheney Manor, who was sort of the only horse I was allowed to ride, and he actually came into training here, and I rode him over fences a bit. But it wasn't until Putty Robin, who suffered a really bad injury, and he had to have his whole shoulder sort of restructured, and he had a load of metalwork in there. But I got the ride on him as a £7 claimer. He had top weight in a listed handicap hurdle around Sandown on Tingle Creek Day. It was when Sprinter won the Tingle Creek, so it was a very special day, and it was definitely one of the launch pads to me getting somewhere.
Well, you said that because of that ride, you got the ride on Carruthers, which gave you the ride on Cunningree.
Yes, because then he went to the Labrador Trophy and hurdle race. He came second there. It absolutely cost me a fortune because as an amateur, you still had to pay your agent. So I think it was about £30,000 to the second place, and effectively I had to give my agent Dave Roberts £300 as an amateur, which was it was a lot of money for when you're just a sort of stable lad, as it were. And then I think the Bradstock saw me ride that, and I had a bit of experience, and that essentially got me the ride on Carruthers.
So these really are important silks.
Yeah, very, very important silks, and I'll always be indebted to them.
So on to the next set of silks, Nico. Now these are very famous colours in the UK and in Ireland. Joe Donnelly, known probably best for Shishkin.
Yes.
You've had a long establishment with Shishkin over the years. Rode him in his bumper at Kempton. Actually, Nicky tells a good story that Joe Donnelly, he won the Gold Cup in these colours with Alboon Photo, and the very next day he had a bumper runner called Shishkin. He was amazed that he was there to watch Shishkin, but he knew that this horse was going to be an amazing horse, and so it's proved. What are your memories of that day at Kempton, and then moving on to the championship races the following years?
Kempton, I remember my only danger was one of Paul Nichols's, and I think we just popped along together, and anyway, the next time I looked round, we were 15 lengths clear or whatever we were, and then we didn't see him again until the following season, so that was it. Can
you tell when you're riding a really good bumper horse? I mean, obviously they've got to jump the hurdles, but he's going to make a good novice because he's got the engine. I mean, it's easy to tell, can you, from an average bumper horse to a good bumper horse?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, particularly how they go through the line at the end, rather than you can when you're on a superstar, really.
And so from that moment, I guess you're really looking forward to having a pop over hurdles in a race.
I was, yeah, very much. And then, in actual fact, the first time I rode him over hurdles, I managed to fall at the first down the back, which was the second hurdle at Newbury, in a sort of 25-20 runner race, and yeah, everyone came over the top of me, and luckily I was unscathed, and so was the horse. So, and then we went back to Newbury and tried again.
I remember talking to Nicky after that fall, actually, and he was desperate to get another run in because obviously he works back from Cheltenham as many of his horses do, and he just needed to get a run into him, and so that run, I suppose you're all hoping, get round safely, show a bit of speed, move on.
Exactly, and that was very straightforward. And then we went to the Sydney Banks at Huntingdon, which was 2-3, and again, he was very straightforward there and very good, and yeah, it set him up nicely to go for a crack at the Supreme.
Now the Supreme was an amazing race. He drifted in the morning. I think the ground was a factor. People thought maybe he wouldn't like the ground. I don't know what you thought about that. And then in the race itself, another one fell almost in front of you, and you were out of position. And I actually still can't believe you got up and won that race. Abracadabras, I think you beat on the line. That was an amazing ride, but also very brave of the horse.
Very much so. He got me out of a lot of trouble that day. It was at the second last, coming down the hill, and knocked 2 or 3 of us out, way out to the outside wing, and it's because you're on the old course there. It's very sharp, that track, and you don't want to lose too much ground out wide. And he managed to come and seemingly jump the last, and kept finding all the way to the line, and just got back up. And Davy Russell was on the other horse, and we only just won by a nose or whatever it was, and it went down to a photo, and Luckily, it went our way. But yeah, if it hadn't have been for that, then yeah, you would have thought that he'd win by a lot further. But no, again, that was a great day.
Then next season, novice chasing.
Yeah.
Obviously very successful. Winning again at the Cheltenham Festival, the Arkle. I mean, that was a procession, if I remember rightly. He won that very easily.
Yeah, when he was a sort of young novice chaser, he's a very straightforward ride. Really, you could ride him any which way you wanted. I remember in the Lightning novice chase at Doncaster. Again, he went through the race incredibly easily, and you almost didn't have to touch him. You just left him alone and let him jump, and then to the Arkle again, and he's a very short price favourite, I think, and yeah, straightforward, good days.
Shishkin, easy as he likes. He's hard on the bridle here with Nico de Boinville. Shishkin has won the Sporting Life Arkle in magnificent style.
And not so straightforward at the moment, but he's one of your favourites, isn't he? I know you look forward to riding him and seeing him as well.
Yeah, he definitely takes a bit of knowing now. He's got his own way of doing things. The way he came out and won the bowl last year, I was really impressed with, and how he beat Ahoy Senior, and yeah, he was very brave after the last, and again, but I mean, if we're going back to one of my favourite memories with him, it was the Clarence House chase.
Yes.
And it was a sort of match race between Energumen and him. They were both undefeated at the time, and it was incredibly. Again, we'd just come out of COVID, really, and it was just the first time I think Ascot had really opened their gates up, and they had a full house there, and Bassi was riding first flow to add another one in the mix, and I think all of us, when we were going around Swinley Bottom, we're thinking we had never been so fast in our lives. To jump down that hill at Ascot, they're big fences, and we were really trapping. And again, turning in, I thought Energumen had flown, and I was booked for second, really, and I'd half just thought, I'll just leave you to it and come home in your own time. But in actual fact, he managed to grab a hold of the bridle, and off he went over the last, and I pulled him a bit wider just to see if I could get a nice sort of run. And sometimes the ground can be a bit better out that way, but particularly when it's sort of soft to heavy. And yeah, and the pair of those horses, it was one of those races where even if you did come second, you knew that you had been part of a fantastic horse race, and it was one that I think all of us who rode in it will definitely always remember.
I think people forget how brave Shishkin's been in his career. He's had many tough races, and he's for the most part, he's been there and he's done it.
Exactly. He's had some races where he's had to really fight and battle, and right now, honestly, he doesn't owe us anything, really. So anything he does do is a big bonus, and again, he's a horse who I hold close to my heart. Whatever he does do is a bonus right now.
So next set, Nico, belonged to the Kelvin Hughes. Now I remember these colours predominantly with you, with Santini.
Yeah.
Giant of a horse, always looked destined for great things. Came second in a Gold Cup, like Cheltenham, won a few races and ran well there. What's your favourite memory of Santini?
Well, first of all, let's talk about these colours, because these colours they're a bit like the Michael Buckley colours. You know, Richard and Lizzie have had horses here for, again, they're part of the history of the place. Even when I was a youngster, and watching Mick Fitzgerald ride the likes of Chumbawamba and Barry on My Petra, there's incredibly good horses that have been through the place. So being able to ride in these colours is always something very special, because they're part of the fabric of the place. And I managed to get on Santini, who again was a lovely big horse. He really was a fantastic horse, and I won his novice hurdle round Newbury. He was very straightforward, would stay all day. And I think one of our favourite wins was the Cotswold Chase. That was a special day, and also when he won the Sefton up at Aintree.
Yeah, he was a giant of a horse. I remember as a novice hurdler, I mean, everyone knew he was going to be a good chaser. That day when he came second in the Gold Cup, I remember it being a finish of heads and necks.
Yeah.
And you didn't get the best of runs, did you? I remember thinking, if you can just get a run, with the way that he powers up the hill, we knew that he liked Cheltenham. I mean, you might get there, but you couldn't get the run at the right time, could you?
No, interesting, for a Gold Cup, it was run at a fairly steady pace. And Santini was a horse who wanted a strong pace, because he was an out-and-out galloper. And it got very messy turning in, and I just didn't have those gears that I needed to get out, because he was a true stayer rather than he didn't have the toe to get himself out of that sort of trouble, and the door just got shut on me at the wrong time. But in actual fact, once we hit the rising ground. He then has stayed on all the way to the line and just got pipped. And I think that was the closest I've come to winning another Gold Cup, but it wasn't to be. And it was literally 2 days after that we were all in lockdown.
Santini is staying on strongly, very strongly. Album photo, back-to-back Gold Cups.
So Nico, these sets of silks just bring back so many memories, don't they? The next one is another really famous silk. The one I remember is Might Bite, who you've won plenty of chases on, but you started riding Might Bite in his colours as a novice hurdler. Then he went chasing, but he didn't really take to him to begin with.
No, we ran him around Cheltenham and it didn't work out at all. It was almost as if every fence was on fire and he didn't want to touch them. So we brought him back, went hurdling, and that was probably the making of him.
So then you went back novice chasing, didn't you? And,
yeah.
And he was a different horse altogether, was he?
Well, I actually got beaten on him first time up at Foss Lass by a horse of Rebecca Curtis's. And needless to say, it was at Foss Lass and the boss was at Sandown. And that was an interesting phone call. And then I got hurt, and Darryl came in for the ride, and Darryl rode him round. I can't remember first, but anyway, he went to Kempton.
Kempton, yeah. And
he fell in the Feltham, which was you got to feel for Darryl, you know. And then I got back on him to go around Doncaster, and then it was on to the RSA.
And I remember the day at Kempton as a novice, the time experts had timed him as being much quicker to that final fence than the King George winner.
Yeah.
So everyone knew that he was a decent horse, and in terms of betting, he was already one of the favourites for the King George.
Yeah.
At that stage. I mean, those victories in the Grade 1s must bring great satisfaction, but especially for a horse like Might Bite, who you've had some hard times with, and then finally it comes right.
Yeah, it was never boring with Might Bite. I think that's the only thing to say, because he always could he always put something into the mix which would make it a bit interesting.
Well, the RSA day is the one that comes to mind with that, you know, in terms of him going off at the final fence, and Nicky always says he went off to have a Guinness at the Guinness Village. I mean, can you just take us through what you were thinking at that stage?
I was, needless to say, I was calling him every name under the sun at the time, because I knew exactly what he was doing. And
he put the brakes on, had he?
No, he knew where the entrance was. He had actually done it the year previously in a novice hurdle in April. And over hurdles, he'd done the same thing, but not as drastic or dramatic, rather. And he nearly pulled himself up to a walk, and then he saw Whisper.
Yeah.
Whisper jumped and got a good run up, and he saw Whisper, and then he's literally gone from a standstill to flat out again. And it showed how much the horse had in the tank, because I'd had a lovely spin round, and I was making the running, and he was doing everything so easily, and then to go from nothing to suddenly flat out again and go and get Whisper up on the line. Again, Davy Russell.
Yeah. You got a habit of beating him by.
Well, no, I don't at all. It's just the luck of the draw, really. And anyway, luckily he got back up but it was a bizarre race to ride in.
As they begin the run round the home turn in the 32 red King George, and Might Bite has gone on by 2 lengths.
And the King George, I can't remember, that's straightforward, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very straightforward.
For Might Bite, it was straightforward.
Yeah, for Might Bite, it was very straightforward. And after all these things, the only sort of instruction the governor would ever give me was, whatever you do not pick up your stick before the last. So I was only allowed to pick it up after the last. And in actual fact, he's a horse who, the more you sort of get too persuasive on him, the more he just says, no, I'll do it my way. So the best bet was just to leave him to it.
Might Bite in front, and he's just won the 32 red King George.
And one race which didn't go the way you wanted it to go, but it's still a magnificent performance, which I'm going to bring up, is when he came second in the Gold Cup to Native River with Dickie Johnson. Now, I watched that race in awe, because you went off, you both seemed to go off really quickly. No other horses got near you, and coming to the last, I thought you'd won. And in Native River, like he did, just kept on finding a bit more. What was that race like?
Again, that was an amazing race to ride in. There was a fresh strip of ground, which is about 2 horses width deep, and Dickie popped out, I popped out, and it felt like being in a match race rather than a 16-runner Gold Cup. It honestly did. I don't think the two of us knew each other were there, but there could have been no one else in the field. It rode like that.
This is the home turn in the Gold Cup. Might Bite on the outside of a driven along Native River.
And then I have to say, turning in, I thought I had the race won rather, and Native River just seemed to battle and battle and battle, and then we hit there's a patch where you cross the track to get to the 2-5 start, and that had become an absolute quagmire. It was almost as soon as we came off that fresh strip of ground on the inside, we hit that bit of bad patch of ground, and that was it. That sort of broke us, and we couldn't get back. But after that, if anyone thought that we had given them 2 hard races, Might Bite came back home, and I worked him 2 weeks after, with Aintree in mind, and the governor wanted to know whether he thought Might Bite was ready for the bowl. And I promise you that the horse had never felt so well, and he worked unbelievably well for him. And so he went to the bowl and fairly bolted up there. And I think if I recall rightly, where the horse I rode in the bowl was the best version of Might Bite that I ever rode.
Might Bite, pure class, pure poetry, and utterly ruthless, wins the Betway Bowl.
So many memories are coming from the tack room at Seven Barrows of famous victories, races that have got away, but also of past owners of Nicky Henderson's. And one set of silks we come to now is Henry Ponsonby, who sadly passed away in 2023, but was really close to the stable. And these colours have been worn by many jockeys, not just yourself, for Nicky over the years.
Yes, Henry Ponsonby was a terrific character, and he was incredibly supportive of young jockeys coming through as well. He actually gave me my first few rides on Scots Dragoon as an amateur. Yes. And he actually gave David Bass his first win on Scots Dragoon when he was a conditional. So he was a real supporter of us youngsters coming through, and he'd always try and help us out. And I've rode a good few winners for him when I was a claimer, and I think one of the best horses that I rode for him was a horse called Karachi Apache, who Barry rode in his bumper around Stratford, and he actually pulled him up halfway round because he was so slow. And then I managed to get on him in his novice hurdles, and he won round Plumpton, and then he went and won the River Don, which was I think it was at the end of January. And I managed to pick up a stick ban, which actually cost me the ride on Coney Gree in the Denman Chase, which when Dickie took over from me, and effectively could have cost me the ride in the Gold Cup. But so yeah, he's a horse I remember fondly, but at the same time, yeah, it could have made my career very different.
And other horses you've ridden in these colours? There's a couple of others you wanted to talk about.
All the Millers, General Miller, and then at the moment the colours and the syndicates are still going strong. We've got a horse called Aston Martini, and we want her to be. She is very nice. She's a very nice mare, and she was bred by Richard Aston, who again died this year. So there's a lot of emotion around this mare, and hopefully we can keep it going strong, and hopefully she goes from strength to strength.
So Nico, we come to another famous set of silks. These probably as famous as any that you've worn, really. Altior being the prime example. I know you've ridden Pim as well, but we know these for Altior. Patricia Pugh's silks. What a horse he was for you and Nicky.
He was an absolute superstar. He really was. I broke him in as a 3-year-old store with Corky, and so I was the first one to ride him.
Wow, you must have a great connection when that happens.
Yeah. You definitely remember all of them, and from that batch of horses, he was the one that stands out. He was very boisterous and knew his own mind, and wasn't easy to be bullied anyway.
And the first time you wore these silks on Altior was at Market Raisin in a bumper. We spoke about bumpers early on, also won by a long way. What do you remember of that day?
It was fairly quick ground then. It was in May, and he had been working very well at home, and the Pughs actually came up to watch him, and I told them this was he's a pure athlete, and I'm really looking forward to riding him. And no one wanted to make the running, so I thought, he's very precocious, and let's go and see what he can do. So anyway, we made the running, and the next time I looked around, I was 14 lengths clear at the line. Not having him moved, really. Yeah. And I remember the horse in second, they were absolutely gutted. because they thought they had a really good one as well. So, yeah, that was a good day.
They've actually named a restaurant at Market Raisin after Altior, called the Altior Restaurant now. So it's probably the best horse they've ever had there. Let's move on. Novice hurdling. I think he made his novice hurdle debut at Chepstow.
Yeah, he was one who we kept in down the bumper route as a 4-year-old to 5 years. And Barry actually took over during those times, and he ran in the listed race at Newbury and came third behind Bouvardere, and I can't remember who won, but Barters Hill.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So that was seriously good bumper. They all went on to win their Grade 1s and championship races, and then I took over when Barry took the JP job at Chepstow early season, and I couldn't really hold him. I can't think, and anyway he proceeded to romp home up the straight. We actually ran him fairly quickly in succession. Then he went to Ascot, and then he went to the opening meeting at Cheltenham, and then he went to Boxing Day. So he had 4 runs in a quick space of time, which is, I think it'd be fairly rare for us. But yeah.
Why do you think he did that? Why? Did he need experience?
I think the governor just thought he needed the experience, and he needed to learn to settle, and he needed to learn how to race properly, really. And I remember thinking after Boxing Day, maybe this horse could potentially want 2.5, because he was doing everything so good at the end.
Nico de Boinville had a nonchalant look over his shoulder, and he's going clear by 12 widening lengths. It will be Altior, a perfect 4 out of 4 over hurdles.
Yeah, then he went to Cheltenham for that Supreme, and I think it's turned out to be one of the best Supremes I've ever ridden, and perhaps one of the best in previous years.
Bouvardere came third, I think, for the stable, didn't he?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you can go back to 7th, 8th place, and even those have won Grade 1s. Yeah.
Here's the final flight, and it's Altior who's clear. A terrific leap when he needed it. Min can't pick up, he's in 2nd place, and Altior is bounding clear up the hill, and it will take the Sky Bet Supreme Novices Hurdle in tremendous style. Altior for Nico de Boinville and Nicky Henderson.
So while you were riding him as a novice, as so many of Nicky's are, were you thinking he's going to be an even better chaser?
Yeah, I mean, the way he grew about a hand from his Supreme to when he came back after his summer break. So that was slightly taken out of our hands, but I actually schooled him after the Supreme, before he went away for his summer break, and I just, on the quiet, just nice and steady, and the way I let him loose over the open ditch, and I thought, oh God, this is going to be a proper chaser, and I think we had all sort of made up our minds by that stage.
He won so many races for you, I don't know really where to start or finish, so I'm going to ask you, what was your favourite victory wearing these silks aboard Altior? So many, I know, it's quite difficult.
It is tough. I think the fact that he managed to have a 19-win sequence, that was a phenomenal achievement in getting one over big bucks, I think.
Yeah.
And I actually got injured before his first 3 runs in novice chases, and Noel Feely took over, and he handled him incredibly well, because he could be quite exuberant. And I mean, the Tingle Creek where Ruby was on earned a so.
Yeah, and it's a very muddy day.
Yeah,
Your face is covered with mud.
Yeah. And we were down at the start, and the heavens just absolutely open. And I just remember the rain dripping down my back protector, and thinking, oh God, this is miserable. And then Ruby went off at a heck of a clip, and the rain was soon forgotten. But that was a very special day. I really enjoyed that.
And it's going to be 10 out of 10 over fences for Altior, and another 10 out of 10 performance.
And I remember talking to you about Constitution Hill, and in the same breath, you mentioned that Altior is the only other horse that showed you so much speed as Constitution Hill. So although you thought he'd be maybe a 2.5 miler, he had a lot of speed to win, maybe over shorter. If there was a flat race over a 1.5 miles, Nicky always said he'd win that.
He did, definitely in those early days as a novice hurdler and novice chaser. He had this sort of seemingly had this turbocharge to him, and even he showed it in his races. Once he jumped the last, it just seemed to kick in, and away he flew all the way through to the line. As he got older, he did start to race a bit more lazily, and yeah, but he sort of always seemed to hit a bit of a flat spot just before you turned in, and if you got through that, and then he just seemed to find these extra few gears.
Wonderful horse.
You
could talk all day about
Yeah.
it, and yeah, I don't want to bore everyone.
Racing up the hill, here's where Altior really kicks in the turbo, and it's going to be 19 for the record-breaking Altior in the celebration chase.
So the next set of silks we'll look at, Nico, are well known on both codes, flats and jumps. The Midland Park Racing have been very successful with lots of very good horses under both codes. The one we're going to talk about that you're associated with is Marie's Rock, who I remember at the time Nicky and you thought might be a champion hurdler, and then maybe went a bit backwards, and then the next season just blossomed, winning Grade 1 races at Cheltenham and Punchestown.
Again, fantastic syndicate, brilliant colours, and they've had some fantastic horses. The Palins do a great job, and they're joy to ride for, really. They keep it very straightforward and very simple. Marie's Rock, as a novice hurdler, I thought she was going to be the real deal, and then slightly lost her way, and the governor managed to bring her back. She won a handicap on, I think it was Boxing Day, the last race of the day, and then she went to Cheltenham, and again I think we were one of the outsiders, and there are some very good horses in that race, and I got a dream run round, and she answered every call, and I don't think I could quite believe it on the day, and no, she's got so much heart. And then she went to Punchestown, which I love going to Punchestown. You know, it's you're in Ireland. It's tough racing there. You have to bring your A game there, really. And again, she had a brilliant spin round. I actually dropped my stick after the last, but that didn't really seem to bother her. So again, a fantastic day, and one that I had my family there as well, which is rare for me. So that was brilliant.
Marie's Rock runs down Stormy Ireland and Epperton.
So we've seen plenty of very famous silks, and here's another set, Nico. J.P. McManus, probably one of the most recognisable set of silks in Ireland and the UK, and you've worn them on several occasions. A couple of horses that come to my mind, Chantry House, John Bon, those two have won great races for you with these colours. But let's talk about Epperton first, because she's obviously a Unibet champion hurdle winner, and you've won a Grade 1 in those silks on her, the Christmas hurdle.
I did. I think Aidan at the time was injured, and I came in for the ride. And again, it was very straightforward. She seemed to jump her way to the front, and from that, I just sort of let her roll. And on her day, she was a very sort of high class mare, and I didn't ride her at her best. I think Barry Geraghty had her at her best, and I rode her. I think I only rode her a couple of times, and once at Doncaster last year, which was the last time she won. But again, these colours are incredibly famous and part of the history of the place. And when I started, Binocular was flying the flag, and you know, it was great just to watch him. And I remember, you know, the schooling session he did before his first champion hurdle here was unbelievable, and I've never seen horses go so fast. AP and Sam Whaley-Cohen upsides, and yeah, great to watch.
And lots of horses here at Nicky's have worn those silks, and behind us we've got the Greatwood Hurdle rug. You've won those colours with Iberica Lord at the Greatwood Hurdle this year. He won really well. He's a horse that maybe you're looking forward to in the future. A lot of these horses we're looking back on, but Iberica Lord's a horse for the future.
Yeah, Aidan rode him at Sandown last year, and he just got beat by Under Control. It was a very good race, and you know, Iberica Lord, it looked as if he was going to keep progressing, and he certainly did that in the Greatwood, and he won it well in the end. Let's
talk about those two horses at the beginning. Chantry House, what a beautiful looking horse, and what a chaser he's been. Now over hurdles, but he was very good over fences in his day.
Yeah, and he was good over hurdles as well. He was third in the Supreme as well, which Barry rode him then, and then I was able to ride him in his novice chases. He went to Wetherby, and then he went to Cheltenham and Aintree, which it was Envoy Allen was in the same race, and I think at Cheltenham we just thought we were all sort of running around for second place, and then he fell early.
Yeah.
And then it was, the game was on, and off we go.
In that race, because he did fall behind you, if I remember, didn't he?
Yeah.
So you didn't know he'd gone. When you're jockeys, do you hear? Do you know?
I think word filtered around.
Right.
Somehow, so I'm sure we did know. But yeah.
Because it probably changes your game plan if you know that a horse he was favourite, wasn't he, to win that race, and one of the bankers of the meeting for many.
Exactly.
So it must change your plan if you know he's gone.
Well, Envoy Allen was tearing up Ireland, and he was the sort of banker of the Irish banker of the meeting at the time, and so yeah, once he was gone, I think it was definitely sort of let's see what we can do.
Well, the other colours which we've seen you in these recently, obviously Aidan Coleman's injured at the moment, but you wore these colours to victory on John Bon. He's a horse that you've known a lot because he's been here for a long time, came with a big reputation and a big price tag, and he's living up to it.
Yeah, he is. He's a fantastic horse. I rode him in his bumper, and then I've done a lot of watching John Bon, but I haven't done much riding of him. But whenever I have, I've always admired him from afar, and when I got to ride him as well, he's a very slick jumper, and he's got a high cruising speed, and right now I think he's definitely flying the flag for this side of the Irish Sea anyway.
And one other horse that you've beaten in these colours was Bouverdere in the Christmas Hurdle when you were on board Verdana Blue, who was the outsider of the Nicky Henderson horses, and you kind of beat JP in the finish. I've never seen someone win a Grade 1 and look so unhappy. I mean, that was a crazy performance because you came on the line and you beat the favourite Bouverdere. But Verdana Bleu ended up being such a fantastic horse anyway. What a mare she was on the flat and over hurdles. What's your memory of Verdana Bleu and that day?
Well, she gave her owners a lot of fun. I remember, the morning of that day, I was in here riding out, and I went in to get my instructions from the governor, and he said, well, what do you want to do on Verdana Bleu? And I said, I think we'll just sit out the back and trap Bouverdere and then do him on the line. And he laughed at me. He laughed at me and said, well, yeah, that's all he did. And then it actually came to pass, and I think it wasn't supposed to happen, I'd say, because on form figures it couldn't happen. And it was just one of those things that did, and I was incredibly lucky to win a Christmas Hurdle, and she was a fantastic mare, but I don't know if I was embarrassed or I think I was just a bit bewildered. I didn't know what to think, really, particularly when you beat someone from your own stable, and it's just mixed emotions, I'd say, rather.
Yeah, I think it was shock.
I
mean, you knew what you wanted to do, but you probably didn't even believe that you could do that to Bouverdere, because you know how good Bouverdere is.
Yeah, and the competitor in me wants to win. Of course. Her owners were delighted, and now she's gone to stud, and hopefully she'll have some good foals, and yeah.
So another famous set of silks that you've worn to success plenty of times, Cheltenham Festival success as well in the Triumph Hurdle. Pentland Hills, who I think it's fair to say was an average flat horse, but really came to life over hurdles.
Very much did. We ran him round Plumpton in February, and I remember coming off that thinking, God, that's given me a really good feel. And I said to the governor, we went and did a racecourse gallop at Kempton, and I said to the governor, we have to run Pentland Hills in the Triumph. He said, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. I said, please, please.
As they rise over the first of the 8 flights, Eric didn't get terribly high. A bad mistake at flight number 1 by Pentland Hills.
And anyway, he ran him. We nearly fell at the first, and that put me back into last place. And then he managed to come through and win the Triumph Hurdle, which was fantastic.
There's not many horses that kind of run at Plumpton in February that then win the Triumph Hurdle. I think Nicky's mentioned that First Bout did it as well, or maybe it was See Then, but one of these horses did it many years ago, but he can't recall too many doing it. It's such a funny way to go to a Cheltenham Festival.
It is. I mean, usually you expect them to go sort of the Adonis Hurdle at Kempton and win a Grade 2 like Soldatino did, and then you go to the Triumph Hurdle, but no, Pentland Hills went to Plumpton and then went and did it.
The final flight in the Triumph, and on the near side it was Cœur Sublime. Over on the far side, Pentland Hills. Pentland Hills now comes and takes the lead with another half a furlong to go. Pentland Hills surging home in the hands of Nico de Boinville to give Nicky Henderson a record 7th win in the Triumph Hurdle.
And he's won plenty of other good races for you as well, novice chasing as well, but probably was better known as a hurdler.
Definitely, as a juvenile hurdler really, because then he went to Aintree and won that one as well, so that was his, but hopefully we'll see, he's still in training, and the governor's just told me actually he's coming back to life really, and hopefully we'll see him in the winner's enclosure before too long.
And a group of owners that have, these colours, another set of colours are famous across the country, but they're really, really enthusiastic owners, aren't they? Lots of them, which means you've got to talk to lots of people after the race. But it must be good fun riding for so many people that love racing.
Do you know, it's a really good way of getting people involved in racing. It doesn't cost too much. It's a good Christmas present or birthday present to give someone, and gives people an interest. And a lot of my family are involved in it, and everyone talks about their horse, and when someone comes up to you and says, "How's my horse doing?" They're 1 of 3,000, but you still give them the time of day.
And when you came into the parade ring or the winners' enclosure after Cheltenham, there were lots of owners there, weren't there? That must be very different from the days when there were 1 or 2 owners.
Of course, but it's fantastic, and you really have to embrace it.
Now we have a set of silks which are famous the world over. The royal colours, worn by so many amazing jockeys on so many truly amazing horses. Now, the story for you, I think, is this was your very first set of silks that came past the post first on Barbershop. Your very first winner.
That's correct. I rode Barbershop in a hunter chase round, Fakenham. I can't really believe that I was let loose on him, really. But yeah, it was one of those when you're very young, you're very naive, and you just hope that it all goes well. So I went to Fakenham on Barbershop, and then we went to, the main aim was trying to get him to the Fox Hunters. And then I went to Fontwell, where he was a very short price favourite, and I don't think I've ever been so nervous in my life before going out on that. I remember I went down with, I think, Bassie and Ben Pauling, so we had a car full, and I think Bassie went and won some novice hurdle, and then I was sent out on Barbershop, and he managed to win. So I had two winners for Her Majesty The Queen as my first winners over jumps.
And while all the famous jockeys have worn these royal colours to success, were lining up at the Derby, at Platinum Jubilee Day, you were actually wearing these colours at Worcester to win a race for the Queen on that special day. Now that must have been amazing.
It was, and it took a bit of planning. I think it was the governor hatched the plan the week before, because I was being asked if I was going to go to Epsom and things, and the governor was like, "No, we're going to run, steal a march, and it's going to be fantastic." And because everyone thought the Queen was going to actually go to Epsom and to the Derby, and she didn't. She stayed at home, and all she wanted to watch was Steal a March. But anyway, the governor got in the photo, and we went and won on Steal a March, and I think Bassie was my main rival that day, and Steal a March was being fairly uncooperative at the start of the race. But anyway, eventually he came good, and Sammy Twiston-Davis always says to me that was the most revved he's ever seen me before a race, because I really wanted it to win it, and I got a fantastic reception there. It was almost like Cheltenham. The people of Worcester really got behind it.
It was an amazing result. Well done for the country winning that race on that particular day. Other horses that you've ridden, Sunshade?
Sunshade, she's a lovely mare. Unfortunately, she died a few years back. It was just before we were going novice chasing with her, and I thought she was going to be a fantastic chaser, but she won a listed race around Cheltenham, and she was part of the old breeding of the Queen Mother, and she was a lovely animal, and there have been some good ones over the years.
And Nicky obviously takes real pride in the fact that he's trained horses for the royal family and the royal colours, and you must likewise love the fact when you've worn these colours that you've been successful on, and just riding for the royal family.
Exactly, and it's always nice to hear when the governor speaks to Her Majesty the Queen, and you get your feedback and things like that. And I was very fortunate that I was able to go to lunch with the Queen before Royal Ascot's, and she was encyclopedic on all her horses and what she knew, and she knew all the ones I'd ridden and all the ones that had been in training here, and it was just an amazing day.
So if you've been following these series, you'll know that nearly every time I come to a set of silks, I say another set of amazing silks, but this time these are really amazing silks that we all know as being for sprinter Sacre. The owner must have had great fun with Sprinter. I mean, what a horse to own.
Yeah, so Caroline Mould owned him. The Moulds were massive sort of racing people based in the Cotswolds. They have Raymond Mould had horses with Nigel, Grand National winners and everything. So Caroline had Sprinter here. The horse and I go way back. It's sort of been fairly well documented that we started the same year I was, again, stable lad, and this was the horse that I was able to ride out every day, and he was always my first or second lot, and yeah, I loved him to bits.
I came down to an open day one day when they had Sprinter parading, and you had like a tear in your eye when you saw him, and I knew he was special to you, and obviously that's one of the reasons why. So the day you rode plenty of good races on him, but the day that he went to the Schlur at Cheltenham, when everyone was questioning whether Nicky should have brought him back, the great sprinter Sacre is never going to be as good as he used to be. Why isn't he retiring? And you showed everybody why he wasn't retired. What a day that was when you won the Schlur. I mean, what did you feel like coming to the last?
Well, it was a fantastic day because I'd been fully part of the hard times as well.
And Sprinter Sacre's being pulled up by Barry Geraghty. Sprinter Sacre pulled up.
I'll never forget the day that Barry pulled him up in the Desert Orchid at Kempton, and I was there on the rail. And in actual fact, Dan Skelton, I think he was just beginning to transition from Paul's assistant, said, "Don't worry, Nico, like, these horses do come back sometimes." And it was hard, the next sort of year and a half, it was hard to believe that. But the governor definitely kept the faith, and we ended up in the Schlur.
Sprinter Sacre is one from the left. There's a massive leap from Mr. Mole, and Sprinter Sacre almost joined him there.
And I don't think we ever expected him to win the Schlur, but we just wanted to see the old spark. And then when he did win and won it so well, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a reception like it.
Sprinter Sacre back to the winner's enclosure, back in impressive form as well. This is the real Sprinter Sacre, wins the Schlur chase very easily indeed.
It was amazing. Nicky always says that his dad put a roof on Cheltenham and Sprinter Sacre took it off. And I think it was true, having been there. It was an amazing day.
Well, it was just as the new stadium or the new stand had just been built.
Yeah.
And it was just as, everyone... it was incredibly special to come back to that.
And the champion chase itself, that must have been, the final piece of the jigsaw, really.
Definitely, the champion chase was very, very special. You were riding against all the greats, Ruby, Erndeso and Noel on Special Tiara. I remember I got a nice little split through them, and at the time it was interesting to see what Erndeso had left, and Sprinter was full of running, and he seemed to win his races between 3 out and 2 out rather than, be a really strong finisher at that time. And the governor always said to me, whatever you do with this horse, do not disappoint him. If he takes you there, he takes you there, and enjoy it.
Sprinter Sacre, they say they never come back. This is one of the great comebacks in the history of the Cheltenham Festival, as Sprinter Sacre is the champion again.
And then the celebration later on, I mean, he won that as well, in really good style.
Yeah, really good style. That was actually the last time I got a stick ban. That was in 2016. And it wasn't for excessive, it was just because I'd hit him when I was so far clear. So, and that was the last time, yeah.
And one of the best horses you've ever ridden, I guess.
Yeah, without a doubt, from what he did during 2012, 2013. So yeah, he was just an incredible horse to be associated with. And, I remember the days fondly, not so much the days that I rode him, but the days where, I was there at Punchestown when he beat Sizing Europe, and yeah, those days were just special.